Welcome back to the Unstuck Movement. I am your host, Rob Z. We have the powerful George Monty with us today on the podcast. And I love George to jump in with a powerful question. I don't screw around. We get right to it because just like in this episode, we're talking about great questions, right? Great questions lead to incredible breakthrough in our lives. So the question I wanted to ask you to set everything up, how did your parents' divorce at a young age lead you to asking great questions that have transformed your life?
Thanks, Rob. It's a great question to jump into. I'm stoked to be here. Like most people who find themselves in events that are beyond their control at a young age, you ask why. My parents got divorced when I was 12, and it wasn't like it was a bitter divorce, but there was definitely some dishes being thrown around, and there was definitely some, being kicked out of houses, multiple houses, and living with one parent, living with my aunts and my uncles. And for me as a young child, you are forced into a situation where you don't know what's happening. And when you look at people who have gone through the fire of uncertainty at such a young age, I think you see one of two things happen. One is you see them tempered. You see that the fire kind of engulfs them and it forces them to look inward and understand that only you have the answers to what reality is. Another way is people that are still going through the flames. Sometimes those flames of despair, they burn us up from the inside out, and they continue to burn and they force you into this world of uncertainty. But for me at a young age, moving through different parents and cycling through homes and whatnot, for me, it forced me to start asking the question, what am I doing here? Who are these people that are my parents? Like, I know they love me. I know that they tried their best. I know they did the best they could with what they had. But at a young age, you don't understand that your parents are people. You don't understand that they have their own lives, their own dreams, and their own ideas of what they wanted to be in life. And then as a child, now that they have a family, those things are cut off from them. And I think I got to see some of my friends and my families that had families intact, and the way that their life moved this way and the way that my life kind of moved this way. And it forces you to ask these questions of like, why does that person have so much? Why is that family like that? Why is my family like this? Why is that happening? And for a young person, you have to seek out those answers. You have to either go ask those families or ask your parents or maybe go to therapy or ask your friends. But there's a lot of self-discovery that happens. And I'm glad that it happened at an early age for me, because it showed the wizard behind the curtain. For me, it showed me that, look, you have to ask this question, why things are happening. Otherwise, you'll never get the answers. And if you ask other people for answers, you're going to get their opinion of why things happen. And your opinion of why things happen is unique to you. And that situation early on in life, I believe, set the bar for me to make better decisions later in life. It didn't happen overnight, but it forced me to start asking questions about why and seek the truth for me. And I think it laid a foundation for everything I've done later in life. So that's kind of the short answer there.
Yeah, I mean, the seed is planted of I need to ask these questions because I need to have these things answered. So We're going to dive into that in 1 second, but I just want to say welcome everybody to the Unstuck Movement. This platform was created to break the chains that have been holding you back in your life. These are true testimonies of breakthrough. I want to thank the sponsor, the Connected Leaders Academy, for making it possible. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. And our guest today, George Monty, founder of TrueLife Media. He blends 26 years of experience with storytelling and inspiring purposeful living and asking the right questions and finding great answers in his life. Make sure you check out TrueLife Media and the TrueLife podcast, because he's killing it. You've been doing this thing for a long time at this point, right? How many episodes of TrueLife are there out there?
I'm coming up on like 650.
Amazing. I love that. So when we're talking about asking questions, the seed is planted of asking questions. This is something that I come back to a lot. There's certain themes in this podcast that come up almost every single episode. And one of those is something that my mentor said to me many, many times. His name's Ray. He's an incredible man. And he said, there's a blessing in everything if you look for it. You might not see that blessing right away. You might not see that blessing until 20 years later, right? You might not know that, oh, wow, I was asking questions at a young age because of my parents' divorce and trying to figure things out. And that led me to this place of now that's what I do. I ask questions and I connect with people and have a podcast that supports that with tens of thousands of people tuning into what I'm doing. How has the asking questions played out in your life? And what have the blessings that you've seen come from that?
All right, here's a beautiful example of it. When I ask myself questions, I found that I come up with a lot of excuses. Because it's hard. It's hard to be truthful with yourself, man. It's hard to be like, well, you know what? They just have that because parents had that, whatever excuse you're going to say.
Yeah.
But if you're honest with yourself, you start realizing at a young age, like, that's bullshit. Okay, I'm just bullshitting myself. I'm just as good as everybody else. I may not have started at the same spot, but there's no reason why I can't get in the race and start running it. And like, so what that has translated into me later in life is the ability to, when you ask questions, you can ask other people questions. And a lot of the times the answer you'll get, you'll be like, I remember I used to think that. Oh, what do you mean you used to think that? Well, I don't think that anymore because of these things. And so when you have a real dialogue with someone and you ask them a question that you've asked yourself a million times, it's kind of painful, and you hear their answer, well, that leads to the next question. And you can help people understand the thought process that you went through. And in doing so, it's sort of like reaching back and holding their hand and walking them down this pathway. And that in itself is incredibly therapeutic, because I've done it with so many people where, oh, you think that, for example, oh, you think that it's just because your dad cheated on your mom or your mom cheated on your dad that you're not good enough. Well, no, I don't think that, George. I think this. And, I had all these questions happen in my mind and I had to answer them for myself. So when I see other people that I talk to and I ask sensitive questions to, you can begin to understand their thought process. And more than that, as a young kid, when you look at your parents and you look them dead in the eye and you ask them something, you can see the way they lie to you, and you can see the way your teachers lie to you. If you ask somebody a question, you can look deep in their eyes and you can know by their flaring nostrils that there's a little bit of uncomfortableness there. Okay, what does that mean? Well, that means they're uncomfortable about this question. Why are they uncomfortable about this question? Because maybe they don't have all the facts. Maybe they're lying to you. Now you have 10 more questions. But these are all the things that I did as a kid to try and understand the situation I was in. And that translates to better relationships later in life. And that it's sort of like looking back at the path that you're on, you understand why you went through those things and you can understand why you are where you are now. All of those things that's happened in your life, good, bad, ugly, all of those things have refined you into the person you are. And you can either see these as gifts or you can see them as sort of malintent, or you can see them as problems that manifest in your life. But I think if you see them as gifts, that you really can hone who you are as a person and take those things that you were given and turn them into skills to help other people. I think that's kind of why we're here. And that's what I want my podcast to be. Is I've been through some crazy times with parents getting divorced is not that crazy. Your kid dying is crazy. Staying in a relationship after your kid dies and understanding how that relationship changed, that is monumental. Leaving a job where you're making six figures because you're not fulfilled at it and you stood up for what you believed in and the world kicks you in the teeth, that's monumental. But these are all transformations that happen to you to make you become a better person. And I think that that's part of asking questions, is how can I take this situation that happened to me and turn it into gold? It's the alchemy, I think.
Beautiful, man. I love that. And I just wanted to include in because my parents got divorced when I was young too. And I don't think I asked many questions. I think I internalized all of my questions. And so when you internalize all of your questions, depending on the personality that you have, my personality, I turned it like it was my fault, right?
Yeah,
That
of
like,
course.
it turned it around into like, if I can't ask anybody, or if I choose not to ask these questions, I'm going to internalize and give myself answers. And those answers are not going to be good answers most of the time. So asking those questions to the right people is really important. And creating an environment where people feel like they can ask questions is the most amazing place you can live from.
Yeah.
I try to be this way with my son right now, because sometimes he'll ask me something and I'll shut him down, or I might be rude, or I might be stressed out about something else. And I try to catch myself and be like, no, man, he's asking questions. And if you shut him down here, then he's not going to, when something really important is going on and he really needs your advice and really needs your help, he's not going to come to you because of the way you acted in the past. You've got to be open and be mindful of that on a daily basis, right? The best leaders in the world, the people that you'd want to work for, the people that you'd want to be president of the country, or that you'd want to follow and just be good friends with, those are the people that they hold space for you in a situation to ask questions, to be vulnerable, and they're also vulnerable with you. And it's really interesting with authenticity, right? It's that character trait, that authenticity is a character trait that you can't even necessarily sometimes know that you're picking up on it. But when you feel something is off with somebody, it's usually like this authenticity thing.
Yep.
And you can also sense that in yourself. You know, when you're not being authentic, you kind of die a little bit inside each time you're not authentic. Like each time you lie, like you might think you're winning, but you're really killing that authenticity inside of you. How did that build? How did you build that authenticity within yourself over the years as you went through these struggles of the divorce or losing your child? Were there things that made you, I'm sure, want to go run, hide, and tear everything down? How did you switch that around and decide to build things up?
It's a good question. I think that our life is like a series of tests, and it's trying to build the most authentic version of us. And so that's kind of the way I look back on my life. Like all these things that happened were sort of this wrestling match with life in order for me to become the better person that I am. And the way that I've found self-love and self-respect and grace, as you like to call it, is the feeling you get after you do the right thing. And maybe that's different for other people, but not blaming other people is usually the right thing, because you can't control what other people do, but you can only control what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And you can realize if you've done something. I'll give you an example. Like not too long ago, I was working at UPS. I've been there for a really long time and I really liked the job. But I've got to this point in my life where I had all this misplaced anger. Like, I was making, our family was doing really well. We live in Hawaii, obviously, and kid goes to a great school. We're making tons of money, but I just felt so empty inside. And it was like the way I was being treated at work seemed to be the manifestation of what was happening. I felt like these knuckleheads are just crushing me. And I realized, I ended up being escorted out of there by a security, but I realized when I look back on my life, what I see is that I was treating myself that way. The same way I thought the world was treating me, that's how I was treating myself.
Mm.
And like that is like, I kind of get goosebumps when I think about it, because man, you can't wake somebody up who's pretending to sleep. You know what I mean by that? Like I was pretending to be asleep, man, and I had the power.
That's
man.
so good. You can't wake somebody up who's pretending to sleep.
You can't, man. And we do that. All of us do that, Rob. Like we pretend like it's okay. You know what I mean by that? Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get up. This doesn't bother me. I'll just get up at like 4:30 in the morning. I'll make breakfast for my family. I'll take my kid to school. I'll get to work by 9, and then I'll work for like 12 and a half hours, and then I'll come home and everyone will be sleeping, and I'll just pretend that's fine. That's perfect, man. Yeah, why not? I can do that. No, I can't. I can't. And it started to manifest itself in ways like, okay, this is BS, man. Belief systems, this is BS. And I would go to work and I started fighting there. Like, hey, this is too much on this truck. I can't do it. You guys know it. Here's why it's wrong. And the more I acted up, the more the world echoed that back to me. The more I acted up, the more work they put on my truck. And I was like, what? This is not the result that I want. Let me show you why this is wrong. And I would go in there and I would point out in a poetic nature the way in which they fail to measure variables and we could all be better. And I laid out these, what I thought were very elegant arguments. And I was met with so much resistance that I was eventually escorted off the premises. And I remember thinking, like, how did this go wrong? I did everything the right way. I laid out the argument. I gave solutions, and I'm being escorted out. And it was one of these aha moments, like, congratulations, you figured it out. That's the win. And I remember thinking, like, how can this be the win? How can this be the win? I'm gonna lose my house. My income's down. I'm no longer the breadwinner. How can this be a win? And then after being home for a while, sitting down and having conversations with my family at the dinner table about integrity, sitting down at the dinner table and realizing, man, I stood up for what I believed in. and I did it regardless of the consequences. I can tell my daughter all day long, hey, you don't go in and do something you don't love. Don't be less than yourself. But if I do it, and I did for 26 years, that little girl has no chance because she's going to do what I do. That is the win. Standing up in the face of adversity can be very uncomfortable, and you can lose everything. You can't. I have. I'll probably lose my house, and but I'm doing what I love, and I know for a fact, because this happened, my relationship with my wife a million times better. My relationship with my daughter, I was non-existent, man. I was around on weekends, and coming home at night, I would be tired. I spent almost no time. We had tons of money, no time, and I wouldn't change that, man. And so that's what I mean by you can't wake someone up who's pretending to sleep. I was pretending to sleep. I woke myself up. I'm living a better life than I ever have. And I want more people to take baby steps towards waking themselves up. And that comes all the way back from asking questions. Are you doing what you know you should be doing? Do you have the courage to stand up and do what you want to do? There's no reason why you can't wake up every morning and do something you love and make a living at it. Think about that. Who has the courage to do that? I don't know a whole lot of people, but I want to be the person that does it so other people will do it. And let's make those sacrifices, man. That's how the world gets better.
Yeah. Amen, brother. I mean, it's one of the most difficult things to do.
It's so hard.
But it is the thing to do. It's the thing that you have to do. So I want to talk about this because you jumped ship. So we're going to take a 60-second break to shout out the sponsor of this podcast. But when we come back, we're going to dive into, right, you decided to make the jump, and you said that your relationship with your family was not where you wanted it to be before then. Now that you left a job that was bringing home the bread for the family, your relationships are better than they were before. I want to talk about the trajectory past that, because people, that's the story right there. That's the story of you want to make the jump, you want to make the leap, but you want to be secure in knowing what's coming next. And how do you know, and how do you plan for and get yourself ready for what's coming next? That's the power, and that's the next level in that transition, in that breakthrough. We'll talk about that in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So this is something that people want to do. Millions of people all over the world, they want to take that leap. They want to escape the thing that's tearing them down. They want to do something in their life that's building them up. What's next for you, George? You take the leap from leaving that 6-figure UPS job. You're living in Hawaii. You've got a wife and a daughter, and you've taken this leap. You took the jump, and now you're in the wilderness, the adventure, right? The adventure of life that God calls us to. It calls everybody to this adventure of what life is. What does that adventure look like for you?
Well, you find out what you're capable of. And I think that is the adventure. When you have money, it's easy. It's easier. When you don't have to have the fight with your wife, or you don't have to have the fight with your kid about not getting stuff, man, it sure does make things a lot easier. I'm not saying it makes you better, but I'm saying it stops you from having to have the uncomfortable conversations about trust. Right. Why can't I have it? Because I don't trust you. Oh, man, that's a big one right there. And that's what I learned. I learned that in my relationships, I was afraid to let people trust me. And that's why I stayed around. Maybe that harkens all the way back to my youth, but that's why I stayed at that job that I didn't like, is because I didn't trust myself. And when you don't trust yourself, you don't trust your partner, you don't trust your kid, and that's zero way to go through life. And so for me, making this jump into a whole new world where, I love podcasting. I love conversations. I love helping people. And when I look back, I'm like, I did it all. I ran the mentor program. I ran the safety committee. I was in the office standing up for other drivers. I've been doing this my whole life. I don't have a degree, but I've been doing what I'm doing in podcasting my whole life. And while it harkens back to this idea of trust, like, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to trust that I know how to work hard. I'm going to trust that I can have a better relationship with my family. And I'm going to trust in myself that I make the right decisions to move forward. And I'm going to trust that in the face of uncertainty, it's going to work out. And the way I do that is I look back on my life and I look at all the times I was in trouble, whether it was when my parents got divorced, still okay. When my kid died, I'm still here. When I was escorted out by security, guess what? I'm still here. So experience has taught me that in the most difficult situations in life that happened to me, I'm still here. I'm still walking away. I still got flesh and blood. I still got a smile on my face, and I have more passion than ever. So if that happened when events happen to me, what happens when I make the events happen for myself? What happens when I believe in myself and my family more than anyone else ever has? That's where the magic is, and that's where the adventure is. That's what's next for me, is being who I am and the most courageous and the best version of myself. And that is not only authentic, but it's contagious. And I feel like contagion and authenticity is a light that guides your way, almost like a magnet, like it pulls you towards where you're supposed to be. I had a podcast with Donald Summers, who's a Harvard graduate, on the future of nonprofits. You know, I recently had so many incredible conversations with Sherry Reyes, who's bringing psychedelics to the world of insurance companies so people at their workplace can get it. Like, I'm having these conversations with people about meaningful events in my life, and it's, how did I do that? There's a bigger force at play. And when you tap into it, when you believe in yourself, the world shows you the way you're supposed to go. So what's next for me is the next right thing, right? Isn't that a great quote from Frozen? Just do the next right thing. And I think if people do that, not only will they build trust with themselves and their relationships, but you will find yourself on a path that, a path to success. I've gotten quite a few gigs speaking. Well, I've got a few people that want to talk to me about speaking gigs. Podcast is crushing. I've just gotten my daughter hopefully into a really good school in California. And, I once heard a great quote that said, growth and comfort don't exist. So I'm happy to be in a position where I'm growing. That's what's next for me, is just continued growth.
Yeah, growth and comfort, they don't go very well together. They don't fit together. And it's interesting because you were saying earlier about it was comfortable, right? The money that you were making and the security you had for your family was very comfortable.
Very comfortable.
But was there growing happening in that comfort, right?
I was dying.
Yeah. It's an interesting conundrum to find yourself in. How can you be growing and be comfortable at the same time? I think getting comfortable in the uncomfortable is the right place to be. Yeah. But then continuing to push yourself into discomfort and learning that that's the healthy thing to do. And that's for me, still finding that balance on a daily basis of, like, I know I need to be pushing myself here because I don't want to get comfortable. You were talking about the people you're interviewing on your podcast, and it's interesting. I love talking to fellow podcasts because I think shapes the way that you interact with people, the people you have conversations with. It's amazing the people that you meet, and you're like, wow, sit down with these incredible people, super intelligent, more successful than I could ever imagine, because I have a platform where we can talk about things that are important to them and important to others. What are the biggest lessons, maybe the biggest pieces of value you pulled out of the hundreds of episodes of podcasts that you've done? How has it transformed you as a person?
Man, it's such a great question. And I would say to anybody out there who's thinking about making a jump or learning communication or wants a degree in marketing, you should start a podcast, because what you learn from podcasting is, I think, a true art of communication. Whether you have somebody in the studio physically there, or whether you're doing it, from here to South Africa or here to Asia, you really begin to understand the symphony of the senses, I call it. Like, when we're on this podcast right now, even though we are separated by a screen and we're talking across the country, there's a lot of communication going on. Like, I'm looking at the books behind you. I see the cross behind you, and I see the way in which you're reacting, the tone that you're using when you have this conversation. And so you are really beginning to use all of your senses together, whether it's vision. I'm listening for tone. You know, it's not like I can touch you, but I can almost taste the words that come out of my mouth. I can almost taste, you know, people talk about that person has good taste or bad taste. In some ways, I can hear the language you're using in good taste. So I'm using this confluence of senses. And I think when you do that, I think podcasting allows you to convey meaning. And I think that's what's been lacking in our lives, at least in my life. Communication has been lacking meaning. Podcasting has also shown me that it's very easy to side monologue. It's very easy to talk past one another. It's very easy for me to hold something I want to say in my head and not listen to what you said and then just say what I said. That happens in regular conversations all day long. But if you want to be respectful and have a meaningful conversation, it's imperative to look at the person and see not only who they are, but what they're surrounded by. Taste their words and actively listen to them. I guess that's what podcast has taught me, is how to communicate more meaningful. And I'm getting better at it. Like I'm in no way a professional at it, but I think it allows people to learn at their own pace. It puts people in front of them from different cultures, different ideas, different understandings, different parts of the world, different time zones. And when you have all of these variables being thrust into the equation of communication, you start to do some pretty good mental algebra, man.
Yeah, it is. It's incredible the growth that you have from having conversations. So I encourage people, like, even just in your daily life, if you treat life kind of like a podcast, like right here, right now, I can't be like, oh yeah, what's going on, man? If there's somebody next to me, right? I'm not going to like have a side conversation. I'm not going to be distracted. I'm going to be fully in. Imagine if we were fully in to every conversation that we had in life. Imagine if we were fully tuned into that person, paying close attention to them, not distracted by our phone, not distracted by what's coming up next, not distracted because of the million other things that can distract us. We're listening to that person intensely. You know, for some reason, Tom Cruise's name just popped in my head. And I think when you hear stories about Tom Cruise, and I don't know much about the guy, but they say how engaged he is when you talk to him. It's like when he talks to you, it's like there's nobody else in the room except for you. And I've heard that a bunch of times about him. And I think like there's something about that, like he's fully present and engaging with you, and it's not fake, it's real. That makes people feel different. It makes you feel that's that authenticity. Now, can you fake that? Probably. You can probably manufacture that. But when you do that authentically and people know that you are really there showing up for them, that's life-changing for people. It's life-changing for you as a human, and it's life-changing for others. And I think if we all would practice that a little bit more of, man, I just need to be where I am right now with this person that I'm with and give everything I've got to them. You can change every life that's around you. I'd like to carry that with me everywhere that I go. I don't carry it with me everywhere that I go, but I pray that I can. And I know you feel the same way too. Having these conversations, it's so dynamic and it's so different from the way our society is perceived to be set up. You mentioned something a few minutes ago. You had these tragic things, these difficult things happen to you in your life, and you said, but I'm still here.
Yeah.
But if I could choose what great things I want to happen in my life and still be here, how much greater would my life be? And I found I had an epiphany when you said that, man. The epiphany was, wow, yeah, even when bad things happen or things I don't want to have happen, I'm still here and I'm still moving forward. So why not take the risks? Why not take the chances?
Yeah.
What is a big risk or a big chance that you feel like you need to take that you haven't taken yet? Is there something on that list for you?
Yeah, it's live my life. Stop letting other people tell you what to do. Stop being afraid. You know, I think for me and so many people growing up, and you know, on some level, and I haven't figured this out, but on some level, I think society conditions us to be afraid. You know, whether it's a school that you go to where you have these authoritarian figures, like you need a hall pass, hey, sit down and be quiet. You know, like from a very early age, you know, you're taken from your parents and you go to this school and like, you know, I'm not saying it's malicious. I'm just saying that the way in which society is currently set up, it seems to lay down a foundation of fear that can be used to push people in one direction and maybe a layer of shame. Right? Like
it's kind of, I mean, you can't sell stuff to people who aren't afraid. And if we're consumers and we're in a consumer market, then fear drives. And this is not a conspiracy thing. It's just like, but if you want people to buy your stuff, then they need to have a problem that you're solving. And that problem usually has fear attached to it. No, it doesn't usually. It always has fear attached to it.
Yeah. It's probably, I read any marketing book and they'll tell you that the stick is better than the carrot. And, look around at the governments, look at your life, look at the authority figures in your life. And like, this is part of me wanting to, live a better life. And that means that most of the fears that you have are self-inflicted. And it's almost cancerous. Like, fear is like cancer, because if you don't fight it, it'll eat you alive. And you start thinking, all of a sudden fear gives way to, shame. And when we start feeling shame, man, no one wants to be around you. You don't want to be around yourself. And like, there's so much problems with depression or anxiety. And I think this stems from this layer of fear, man. Like, look, it's right now, everything is perfect. Right now in your life, everything is as it should be. What are you going to do with that? Like, right now, if you have your freedom and you have your health and you got everything, you have every if you have your freedom and your health, you can take the next step towards being great. And if when you take that first baby step, deep breath, take the step, and then take the next one, and then take the next one. For some people, that means making better relationships. For some people, that's coming to the terms with you're not honest with yourself. For some people, that might be going for a jog. For some people, it might be quitting smoking. For some people, it might be quitting a job or getting fired. But whatever it is, man, it's the overcoming of fear that allows you to have the clarity to see where you should move. And for me, like that is like, from this point forward, I'm not going to tolerate anybody treating me less than who I really am. Like, I don't deserve that. And the catalyst for me, the real catalyst for this was looking at my daughter and being like, I do not want her to have this fear that I had. And here's an interesting exercise people can do. When you start looking at irrational fears in yourself, go, where did that come from? My father was given up for adoption when he was a baby. And if you think about abandonment and you think about the way genetics can imprint on people, in my opinion, my father being given up for adoption as a baby was imprinted abandonment on him. And that's something that he carried genetically with him. Maybe his father had it, I don't know. But those type of genetic generational traumas get passed all the way down. And they can manifest themselves in abuse. They can manifest themselves in all kinds of negative ways. And if you're not aware of where this thing may have come from, and that's called doing the work. Where did this fear of how come I feel like I'm not, why do I have this feeling of shame? And you start tracing it back. Well, I thought about it when I was younger. Maybe my parents got divorced. Maybe my dad felt that way. Oh man, maybe my parents had this same fear. And you trace it all the way back and you get to like, holy crap, my dad was adopted. He probably felt abandoned. And when you get all the way back there, this sort of release is like, it's like, okay, hey, wait a minute, this fear is not even mine. Why have I been carrying this thing for so long? And then it just, boom, like something explodes. And I look at my daughter, I'm like, okay, well, look, I don't want her to have to carry this anymore. So I'm going to stop it. And that's called breaking the cycle, whether it's abuse, whatever it is, man. What do you think? Is that going back too far to speak of generational trauma? And
well, that's kind of what we all kind of experience throughout our lives, right? These things that are outside of us that we kind of carry with us everywhere we go. And, so I was in therapy for a long time, and I haven't gone recently, but I got tons of value out of it. But at one point I felt like I don't need to keep going back into the past. We went back there so many times. It's time to just move forward.
Yeah.
I don't need to keep going back to these things. And also, so as a Christian, I believe, you pray Jesus breaks those generational curses off you. Those generational curses are real. Those things are real, and they're in your lineage, they're in your DNA, but they can be broken off. They don't have to stay. They don't have to stick around. And who would want them to? So break those freaking things off. It's time for them to go. Like, it's time, like you said, man, like we can break that lineage. We can break those curses. We can break that cycle, whatever it is. Those things can be broken off, but it starts with you, and it starts every single second of every day. Every day you have the choice to make the choice to break the thing off and get rid of it. I don't want it. I want it gone. If it pops up, I want it gone. And I'm going to continually rebuke that thing until it's out of my life. And it's easier said than done, obviously, right? It's a walk we're constantly going on in this life. But when you're on this journey and you see these things that come up over and over and over again, and I think to myself, like, this isn't me. I'm not doing this. Like the me that I know I'm not doing it because I'm talking to myself about how I don't want to do it. Like, what am I doing this for? Like, this isn't me. So it needs to go. And you got to put the work in to get those things out of there. Right. And you have to put the work in. God meets you where you're at. You have to do the work to get to the place where the giant breakthrough happens in your life. And I think it's really cool for you. Like, I love looking at your podcast and what you've been doing, the journey that you're on. Like, you found the thing for you. You bottled it up. Like, here it is. Here's the thing that makes me powerful. Here's the thing that connects me to incredible people. Here's the thing that gives me this driving force to move forward. What do I do with this? And like, there's so much magic there. There's so much potential and opportunity, right? I think it's so cool to see potential and opportunity and be like, what are we going to do with it now? Now, what am I going to do with it? Like you said, you're still here through the bad things. You're going to still be here through the great things. So why not make the great decisions that push you forward into who you were truly created to be? What an amazing place to live from. And I think we all, like you said earlier, man, we all need to live from that place.
Right.
As you go back to California, and I just, first of all, I want to just ask you about living in Hawaii. How long have you lived in Hawaii for?
I lived out here in 2007. So
2007. So you've been there for a long time, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
How has living, well, you came from California, so you've always been in an amazing climate, but how has that changed who you are and how you look at the world?
Man, it's a great question. Thank you. It's like eating a big slice of humble pie. So I was born and raised in San Diego. And, you don't realize how much you are a product of the environment in which you were born in. And, I didn't live in Hollywood or LA. Sometimes we go to Orange County and whatnot, but for the most part, I didn't realize how bombarded I was by media and billboards and this flashing just signs everywhere. I mean, it wasn't Vegas. There weren't lit up flashing signs, but there's billboards everywhere. When you move to Hawaii, no billboards. There's no billboards on the freeway. There's no advertising. It's not allowed.
Oh, wow.
And there is this, and I remember being in California the first year. I was, I moved out here. I did zero research. I had a job, but did zero research. And I got on the plane, had a shot of tequila, like, yeah, I'm going to live in Hawaii. I sold all my stuff. And when I landed in Hawaii, I almost started crying because I realized the magnitude of what I did. I sat in the baggage claim and I'm like, I got 2 black bags, $2,000. I got a job. I don't have a car. I have no place to stay. I've never been here in my life. I have no friend. I have nothing here. What the hell this is the dumbest thing ever. And I just remember sitting in the baggage claim, like tears almost, like, and I sat there for a while. And then I went outside and I found a shuttle and stayed at this back little hotel on the outskirts of Waikiki. And I remember just on one level being so like, what did I do? But on another level, just seeing the incredible beauty of the landscape around me and having it energize me. And so like, that was the beginning of this sort of strange cracking of my arrogance giving way to humility. I think it's like the cracking of the shell happened there. Like, I used to have this Lincoln Navigator. Now I don't have any car. And I started realizing how much of my life was built up on these things that I had. And I thought that all these things were who I was. And, I ended up getting a moped. And I ended up meeting my wife. Here, a funny story, when I met the woman of my dreams. I met my beautiful wife on my UPS route. And I remember I wanted to ask her out. And I was 30 years old at this time. And I'd seen her at the office. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask her out. So I asked her out, got her phone number. And then I was renting a room and I had a moped. And I called her up and I was like, hey, how's it going? I'd love to take you to dinner, maybe spend some time, go surf, or maybe we go to surf and get some lunch or grab some coffee or something like that. She goes, that'd be great. She goes, when are you going to pick me up? And I remember I froze because, I used to have this cool Lincoln Navigator, man. I thought that's what girls want. That's what women want. And now I had a moped. And I'm like, this girl is going to not even like me. I told her I have a moped. She's like, you're a total loser. And so I was quiet and I go, oh, I was kind of hoping you could pick me up. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I got to be honest with you. All I have is a moped. I mean, you could ride on the handlebars, but I don't think it'd be very comfortable. You know, and I was trying to make a joke out of it. And she just iced me. Like, it went dead silent. And all my mind started racing. Oh, man, she could tell me, no, what a dumb. I'm 30 years old. I got a moped. I'm 30 years old. I got a moped. I'm renting a room. Who am I? She started laughing. She goes, yeah, I'll totally come pick you up. You know, and so it was like this sort of humble pie that happened. You know, another thing that I learned here is that, you know, I was very fortunate to spend time on Molokai, which is like this super, super local style island. And, you know, I got to travel a little bit. And when I was working on Molokai, I was the only representative from UPS on that island. There's not a whole lot of white people there. And when you're a white person that lives in San Diego, like you're the majority. Like you don't understand what it's like to be a minority. You have no clue. How could you? Like, how do you know? How does a fish know what water is, right? And so when I went to Molokai, I remember being over there and just being so enamored by the landscape and like, you know, just like, this is so beautiful. But then I stayed at the only hotel over there. And everyone should check out Molokai. It's a beautiful place. But I remember sitting at like the bar over there, and this one guy comes up and just boom, bumps me off the bar stool, like shoulder checks me off the bar stool. I fall down. And I'm like, oh man, what's going on here? And I get up, and the guy's pretty big. He's got a couple of friends with him. And I'm like, what's up, man? And he's like, you are a problem. I'm like, me? I'm a problem? And he's like, yeah, I just said you're a problem. Would you not hear me? And now I start to panic. And I'm like, there's nobody here that looks like me. Nobody. You know, I'm in the wrong part of town, man. This is the wrong spot for me to be at. You know, and I'm like, I'm trying to think, how do I get out of this? And I'm like, hey, let me buy you a beer. So I buy him a beer, he just drinks it, and he's like, you're still a problem, man. And I'm like, are you sure? Because like most people I know think I'm a pretty cool guy. And he's like, no, man, you're a problem. And I'm like, why am I a problem? He's like, because you're white. And I went, oh, that's what that feels like. This is what it feels like to have people have these ideas about you without ever knowing you. I'm like, I love Hawaii for that. And I love the fact that I got to be submersed in a culture where I was the only person and the tables were turned. And it made me see myself in a way that was a little bit despicable. Like I had some ideas that like, I had these unconscious biases about people. And you know what? On the flip side of that, it also made me proud because it's not just white people that have those ideas. It's all people, man. We're all a little bit gravitate towards the people that we grew up with.
Yeah,
And
towards
so,
comfort, right?
yeah. And when you have these ideas, like maybe this person is picking your jobs, or maybe this person bought all your property, but it's just silly, man. But I never would have known that had I not been in this situation where I was submersed completely in another culture and I was the minority. So that is like one of the many lessons that taught me this beautiful idea of humility and like trying to be humble. And I still got to work on it. I'm not perfect by any means, but living in Hawaii, and I would recommend this to everybody listening. If you have an opportunity to pick up and go live somewhere else that you've always wanted to go, do it. It'll change your life in ways that you can't possibly imagine. If you have the courage to just leave, if you need to look at the scriptures and think about the prodigal son, or if you need to look at whatever you need to look at, mythology, the hero's journey, I recommend everybody do it, whatever age you're at. And if you don't have any commitments, if you're not married, if you don't have kids, now is the time. Take a chance on yourself, take a chance on your life, and you will grow in ways that you never thought possible. The world will throw these things at you that you might think are hurtful or harmful or scare you, but that it's growing you. And when these things happen to you, realize the world loves you and it's trying to teach you. So it's been amazing here. I've bought a couple houses, man, and I've lost a couple houses, but I wouldn't trade any of it for the world, man. All of these things that have happened to me, all of these, and that's what excites me for the future is like, oh, this is a low point. Well, you know what that means? That means that the next mountain I'm about to climb is going to have the most stupendous view I've ever seen. Because every valley I've been in, there's a nice stream down there, but I don't want to stay down there. And so like it's interesting to look at it from that angle, man. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, you can't stay at the peak and experience another peak. You got to go to a peak, and then you got to find a valley to find another peak, right? That's just kind of how it works. It's amazing. I'm always amazed by the microcosms in life. It's like everything ties into itself, like in that theory. Like it's true. Like in order for you to find the next peak in your life, you're going to have to go through that wilderness that's down inside of that valley to go back up again. It's just how things work, and it works on a big scale and a very small scale. This is a Fantastic, fascinating conversation, George. I'm glad we got connected, man. If people want to find your podcast, how do they find your podcast? What's the best way to find you?
Just Google TrueLife Podcast and I'll come up. I'm very thankful. I'm ranked super high. Like if you just Google TrueLife Podcast, I'll probably be at the top. And then once you go there, you can find me on all the outlets, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple. I'm on all of them. And I'm thankful to be here, man. I can't wait to have you on my podcast. With the people that have found this interesting, I got some really cool guests, and I feel like I'm shining a light on the hero next door. I want people to see my podcast as interviewing some of the most incredible, thoughtful, interesting people that are just like you and me. And I think that's who the real heroes are. It's the guy next door that you don't know, you don't talk to, but like, look what this guy's doing, or look what this girl's doing, or look what this kid's doing, or listen to the wisdom of this guy. Like, wisdom is all around us. Beauty and grace and love is all around us. And you'd be surprised how close it is, man. And that's kind of what I want my podcast to encapsulate, man. So if you're out there, you want to come on, reach out to me, man. You got a story to tell, reach out.
That's so true. And just to go off that for just a second, man, I live in a fairly small town in central Pennsylvania. Altoona, Pennsylvania. There's about 40,000 people in this town. I know incredible people in this town. People have changed my life so much in this town. And I know people in even smaller towns near me that are maybe have 4,000 people in that city. And there are so many incredible people I know from those towns. Every nook and cranny in the world, there's incredible people that you can learn from, grow from, become close with. And so breaking that mindset of like, it's so hard to find good people. No, good people, but you have to be aligned with what they want, and you'll find them. It's so true. So George, amazing conversation. I want to thank you for being a guest on the Unstuck movement.
Man, I'm thankful for your time. And I think people should go back and check out your catalog because you've done some great work. You've spoken to some really cool people. And beyond all that, I think that the Unstuck movement is a great way for people to find some inspiration and know that they're not alone, man. So thank you for having me, and I appreciate the time.
Absolutely, brother. Until next time.
All right.